Welcome back, everyone, ready for another deep dive. Today, we're digging into some recent crime stories that have been making headlines, and we'll also catch up on some cases you might have heard of before.
Always ready. Sounds intriguing.
So imagine this. You survive a horrific attack. You're fighting for your life, and then it hits you. The person who tried to kill you is your own parent.
Oh, it's just chilling to even think about.
It sends shivers down your spine.
Yeah,
And that's exactly what happened to a 14-year-old girl in Oklahoma.
you're talking about the Amy Hall case.
That's the one. Back in 2018, Amy Hall, she shot her 3 children while they were sleeping.
Tragic. Absolutely tragic.
It really is. 2 of her children, they were 18 and 16, they didn't make it. But her 14-year-old daughter, she was shot in the head, but somehow she fought back.
I remember that detail. It's incredible that she even survived. That takes an unbelievable amount of strength.
You're telling me.
Yeah.
And she didn't just survive, she disarmed her mother. She might have even saved her own life.
A true testament to the power of the human spirit, even in the face of such unimaginable horror.
Absolutely. Now, Amy Hall, she tried to escape. There was a whole high-speed chase and everything.
Wild.
But she was eventually caught. And later, she claimed she was trying to protect her kids from their father,
Yeah.
claimed he was abusive.
If I recall correctly, the father had actually raised concerns about her mental state a couple of years earlier during a custody battle.
That's right. Yeah, he did. It's a really complicated, messy situation. A lot of finger pointing and, unfortunately, a lot of tragedy. Just recently, Amy Hall was sentenced life in prison plus 240 months.
Wow. That's a hefty sentence. It really makes you think about the lasting impact of these crimes, not just on the victims, but on the perpetrator as well.
It does. It really underscores how these custody battles can spiral out of control.
Yeah.
And mental health, it plays such a huge role in so many of these cases.
Absolutely. It's a tragic reminder that we need to have better systems in place to identify and address these issues before they escalate to such a horrific level.
Couldn't agree more. Now, let's switch gears for a second and talk about another disturbing case, this one down in Florida. 22-year-old guy, Emmanuel Espinosa, pre-med student.
BMES.
Yeah, pre-med. Brutally stabbed his mother over 70 times.
Oh, I remember hearing about that. That's just brutal, over 70 times.
Yeah, it's a really violent case. And what makes it even more chilling is that the whole attack was captured on their Ring doorbell camera.
Oh, wow.
It's a reminder that even in seemingly safe spaces, these horrible things can happen. And there's another detail that I can't get over. During the attack, he was listening to No Church in the Wild by Jay-Z and Kanye West.
What? That's so bizarre. Why that particular music?
I know, right? It's really strange. And afterwards, he offered this weird justification, saying he'd had years of anger and resentment toward his mother, but then also claimed to have a good relationship with her.
That's so contradictory. It makes no sense.
Exactly. It's like he's trying to make sense of something that just doesn't make sense. And get this, he also said that his biology studies influenced his stabbing technique.
Wait, what? How could he even...
And after the attack, he actually asked his mother for Neosporin.
Neosporin. After stabbing her over 70 times. It sounds like there's a serious disconnect from reality there.
It's just baffling, right?
Yeah.
It's a case that just leaves you shaking your head, wondering what could possibly lead someone to do something like that. Speaking of baffling cases, there's been some developments in the missing Kansas moms case.
Oh, yeah, Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly. That one's a real head-scratcher.
It is. I mean, 2 adults vanished without a trace, their car found abandoned in the middle of nowhere. What happened?
Yeah, and the authorities suspected foul play right from the start.
They did. And remember, we talked about how they were headed to Oklahoma.
Right.
Well, it turns out Veronica was in a custody battle and could only see her kids under Jillian's supervision.
Oh, that adds another layer to it, for sure. Custody battles can bring out the worst in people.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. The children's biological father was in rehab far away at the time. So it's not as straightforward as it seemed at first.
So if it wasn't him, then who? It's like a giant puzzle with missing pieces.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the location where their car was found, it's desolate, like miles from civilization. There's even drone footage of it.
I bet that's creepy.
Oh, it is. Even journalists who went to investigate said they felt uneasy, like someone was watching them.
I can only imagine. You're out there, alone, in the middle of nowhere with a story like that hanging over you. Gives me chills just thinking about it.
And to make things even more unsettling, there are all these rumors going around locally about pig farms and human trafficking in that area.
I heard about those too, but the authorities haven't said anything about it.
Right. They've been super tight-lipped about the whole thing. So we're left with speculation and these unsettling rumors. It's frustrating, you want answers, but it's like hitting a brick wall.
I get it. It's human nature to want to understand, to make sense of these tragedies, especially when it seems like the people who are supposed to have the answers aren't giving us any.
Exactly. It's a reminder that sometimes, even with all our technology and investigative tools, the truth remains elusive.
It really is. It makes you wonder, what could have happened that just wiped away any trace of them? It's like they just vanished into thin air.
You're right. It's not like one person deciding to start a new life. It's two. It's just, it's strange.
It is. Makes it less likely they just took off.
Yeah. And speaking of strange, remember the Dylan Rounds case? 19-year-old who disappeared from his farm in Utah?
Oh, yeah, that one was just heartbreaking. So young.
It was, wasn't it? And the whole thing was just so suspicious right from the start.
Yeah, especially with that suspect, James Brenner, already being in jail for, what was it, gun charges.
Right, unrelated gun charges.
Mm-hmm.
And then they found blood and Dylan's DNA on one of his boots.
Oh, right, and his phone, they fished it out of a pond, didn't they?
Yep, they did. And there was even time-lapse video of Brenner cleaning a gun. A bloody one.
It's amazing what they can do with technology these days, huh? I mean, that time-lapse video, that must have been key.
It was. Sadly, Dylan's body was recently found. Brenner took a plea deal.
Oh, that's just awful. So sad.
It really is. Another young life cut short. Makes you think about how fragile life can be.
It does. Even though it's tragic, at least there's some sense of closure for his family. And hopefully that plea deal will shed some light on what really happened to Dylan.
You're right. It's always tough for families left with so many unanswered questions. And speaking of tough cases, there's an update on the Chad Daybell trial. Remember, he's connected to the Lori Vallow case, the doomsday couple.
Oh, yeah. How could we forget? That case was just, well, wild doesn't even begin to describe it.
It was a wild one, that's for sure. Lori Vallow, she's already been convicted, right?
Yep. Guilty on all counts. Murder of her own children. I still can't wrap my head around it.
It's almost too much to comprehend, isn't it? And now it's Chad Daybell's turn in court.
Right. It's finally his day of reckoning. It'll be interesting to see how his trial plays out compared to hers.
It will be. During opening statements, the prosecution laid out their case, focusing on this suspicious timeline of events. And, well, everything just seemed to point to Chad.
I can imagine. But what's the defense saying? Are they still sticking with the whole, Lori was the mastermind behind everything and Chad was just a pawn in her twisted game?
Pretty much, yeah. They're painting him as this, manipulated victim, trying to shift the blame onto Lori and her brother.
It's a bold strategy. I mean, it worked for her brother. He walked free, but I don't know. It'll be tough to convince a jury that Chad wasn't involved, especially with all the evidence they have against him.
We'll see how it plays out. To really understand the impact of this case, you have to hear from the families of the victims. We have a clip from an interview with the father of one of Lori's children. It's powerful.
I bet it is. It's easy to get lost in the legal back and forth, but these are real people, real families whose lives have been shattered by this.
It's a reminder for all of us, to pay attention and be there for each other. Sometimes the signs are there, but we just don't see them.
It's true. We can't always prevent these tragedies, but maybe, just maybe, by talking about them, by understanding them, we can learn something. Maybe make a difference somehow.
You're right. It's about awareness, about being vigilant and supporting each other. Now, before we wrap things up, there's one more case I wanted to touch on. It's the Jennifer Pan case. It's a bit older, but it really highlights how far some people will go to control their own narrative.
Oh, yeah, I vaguely remember that one. Wasn't she accused of setting up her own parents?
You got it.
Yeah.
She orchestrated a whole home invasion, and her mother was killed, her father seriously injured.
Wow, that's just crazy. What would drive someone to do that?
Well, that's the thing. Jennifer had been living this lie for years. She faked university acceptance letters, even degrees, all to keep up appearances and please her parents.
It's like she built this whole fantasy world, and when it started to crumble, she just snapped.
Exactly. It's a tragic reminder of the pressures some people feel to succeed, to live up to these expectations, even if it means sacrificing their own truth.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it, how many people out there are living a lie, feeling trapped by these expectations?
It's a sobering thought for sure. It's important to remember that everyone struggles. Everyone has their own path. And it's okay to ask for help, to admit when things are tough.
Couldn't agree more. We need to create an environment where people feel safe being themselves, sharing their struggles, and seeking help when they need it.
Well said. And on that note, that wraps up our deep dive for today. We covered some heavy stuff, some truly heartbreaking cases.
We did. It's a lot to process.
It is. But these stories, they're important to talk about. They remind us that darkness exists, but so does hope and resilience. And that sometimes the best thing we can do is be there for each other, listen, and offer support.
You know, it's easy to get caught up in the sensationalism of these cases, but it's crucial to remember the human cost, the families left behind, the communities impacted, the ripple effect of these crimes.
Absolutely. It's a reminder to approach these topics with sensitivity, empathy, and a commitment to seeking justice and understanding. And that's what we strive to do here on The Deep Dive. We hope these conversations spark something in you, encourage you to think critically, to ask questions, and to engage in meaningful discussions.
We want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, your insights, your own deep dives into these topics. Let's keep the conversation going.
Exactly. We'll be back next week with a brand new Deep Dive. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.